Former Congressman Matt Gaetz, in an appearance on Tim Pool's podcast, making some interesting revelations about his experience with AIPAC. Let's take a listen.
I remember my first AIPAC reception, and like your fundraiser tells you have to go, and your chief of staff tells you have to go, your committee chairman all tell you have to go, and you get there and you wear this name badge, and I remember there's a QR code on it. And what we were supposed to do was go talk to donors, and then if they liked you, they scanned your QR code to make a donation, like on the spot. And so can you just imagine how demoralizing that is to like be told that your job for the next several hours to go chat people up, hoping they would scan you like a can of tomato soup on the way out of the meeting.
I mean, it's literally purchasing.
Right. And so I saw that and I was like, wow, that is so freaking weird.
Literally making the choice on the spot, whether or not they're going to buy this congressman. I mean, it's just like, and to be honest with you, this is not really any different from the way that other fundraising works. I mean, I ran for Congress, right? I've been to these events where you go and you try to meet and network with donors who typically give, in my case, to Democratic candidates. And you're schmoozing. There's a whole dance around it. Like, let me get your information. That means so I can call you later and beg you for dollars. They just cut right to the chase. Like, you're just gonna wear a QR code. And then if I like what you have to say, which with regard to AIPAC would be Israel now, Israel forever, you can genocide whoever you want, we don't care, we'll back you up even when it's completely unreasonable. As long as you're willing to say those words, then they'll scan your QR code and give you some dollars right there on the spot. They've got this down to a science, Saagar.
Well, according to AIPAC, the QR code is for security purposes only, and that it is false. They say that they have.
What do you mean for security purposes?
I don't know. In terms of, listen, I'm simply.
Have you ever needed your own personal QR code to feel secure?
Maybe I should. Maybe I should. They say that they include AIPAC security. Yes, they say the accusation about fundraisers is, of course, a lie. Barcodes are on the name badges for security reasons, not fundraising. They are scanned for that purpose. Maybe Matt Gaetz was confused because he wanted people to scan his barcode, and they didn't want to talk to him.
Well, I'm glad you got their denial in. Thank you. Cover our bases here.
Yeah. Matt Gaetz's response is, IDK AIPAC, I read something in the history books that putting codes on people was really bad. Ooh, okay. Oh, wow. He went there. He went there.
He did.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that it's, in general, it's like you described. And this gets to the whole AIPAC conversation. And everyone's like, they should register as a foreign agent. And I mostly agree with that. But part of the problem is that in some ways, the AIPAC defenders are correct only in that they're like, what are you talking about? It's all American citizens. And you're like, yeah, that is the issue that we kind of have to grapple with. The foreign registration thing almost belies the point of there is an entire connected political network, yes, of U.S. citizens who exist solely for the purpose, or at least in this case, to preserve the so-called U.S.-Israel alliance, which is tremendously impactful at the political level. I think that that does genuinely amount to some level of foreign interference or something, but it's a more sociological question of like, this is so crazy about, you know, the ability, you know, there's all these billionaires, people like the Adelson family and others who have said things in public like, I wish I'd served in the IDF rather than the U.S. Army. And you're like, dude, like it's such an insane thing to say, right? And to use your political influence and all of that specifically on behalf of a foreign nation. How do we draw that line? Like, in my opinion, we should update probably the legislation to say that if you're overtly going to push another country's agenda, even if you are a U.S. citizen, that is going to have to qualify in some way as far, even if it's a foreign dollar.
It'd be very difficult to draw that line.
Hard. Exactly.
Very difficult. I mean, the truth of the matter is that, look, they're able to exploit our wide open Wild West campaign finance system where, you know, anyone can be bought for any price at any time. And there's very little limits on that. And by the way, David Sirota Flagg from the Supreme Court has taken up a case that's going to, if you thought there were already no campaign contribution limits, that could even more decimate the ability to regulate big money in politics whatsoever. And so, look, the Israelis, I mean, Netanyahu's literally like from Philadelphia. So they understand our politics. They understand our political system. They know where the loopholes are. They know how to gain influence, and they have done so extremely, extremely effectively. They have, over the years, convinced an entire religious group that that the way for them to serve God is by, allowing the Israelis to do whatever they want, for us to send billions of dollars every year to them to, to buy weapons and subjugate an entire different group of people. So they have wielded that influence extraordinarily effectively. And so, I don't know, we'll take AIPAC's word for it that it wasn't exactly as Matt Gaetz described, but there's no doubt that they have the most organized ability and the most persistent ability to get not just to politicians, but to media personalities. We're about to talk about this next story, to anyone who has influence. I told before my own story, as soon as I got hired as a host at MSNBC, lo and behold, AIPAC wants to take me on a trip to Israel. I did not take them up on that. Jabal Bowman told his story about when he's running for Congress. They went through all sorts of channels to make sure they could get a meeting with him, because he initially said, no, I don't want to sit down with AIPAC. So they went through this well-respected organization like Uplifting Black Men in New York City that he'd been involved with before. They used them as a conduit to be able to get their meeting and get in his ear. Very persistent. And they have lots of money to spend, apparently. Let's put this next piece up on the screen. So they hatched a plan to try to hire celebrities like Chris Pratt and Steph Curry, a newly created firm. This is a Responsible Statecraft, by the way. They've been doing some really good reporting. And this gentleman in particular, Nick Cleveland Stout, we'll have to get him on the show sometime. But anyway, he writes, a newly created firm called Show Faith by Works is carrying out a $3.2 million outreach and digital targeting campaign to Christian churches in the Western U.S. on behalf of the Israeli government. Firm's goal, as described in its filing under FARA, is to increase positive associations with the nation of Israel. They're going to carry out that campaign through December for its work, which includes targeting churchgoers with pro-Israel ads, geofencing major churches, meaning that they're going to, like, if they see your cell phone number in the area of this megachurch, they're going to target you directly using geofencing, hiring celebrity spokespeople. That's where the Steph Currys and John Voight and Chris Pratt and Tim Tebow and others come in, and visiting churches and colleges with a mobile trailer called the 10-7 Experience on behalf of the government of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. This, of course, will come as no surprise, because he talked publicly about how, one of the fronts in the war is the 7th front, the 8th front, I lost track, was this information war. He talked about how important the purchase of TikTok by Zionist allies was going to be, and the amount of censorship that they'd be able to put into place there. Talked about Elon being an ally and being able to, shape the conversation on Twitter as well. So they are very, very intentional about what they're doing with all of this.
Yeah, it is. Reading it is just so crazy, but it all makes sense, right? Is that it's a $3.2 million outreach digital marketing thing. By the way, we were talking about this. It actually was. This is what's crazy about FARA. They actually have to admit this stuff in the documents. So they're like, yeah, that was an early, they contacted him. He didn't deny that the plan was to hire or try to hire some celebrities.
Yeah.
He said it was an early planning document. He's like, but we haven't followed through or contacted any of them just yet. But he doesn't deny.
Just to be clear, there's no indications that any of these particular people have received these funds. This was just like their target list of people.
Yeah, they say, John, all the actors and other famous people that you just listed, they say specifically that they initial planning document was to contact them, but nonetheless, can we just sit with $3.2 million? Like, this is so much money, specifically for some geofencing, targeting Christian church campaign, but it also fits a lot with the political strategy that we talked about here, which is going after the evangelicals and the megachurch pastors who become like the biggest pushers of the Kufi movement, the Christians United for Israel. They lead, like Mike Huckabee, a lot of those end times trips to Israel for a lot of the tourism groups. I mean, remember, one of the few times that Huckabee criticized Israel was because they were holding up the visas for a lot of those evangelical groups who were visiting. Anyway, I mean, it is the bedrock of the U.S.-Israel alliance in terms of the last bastion of like genuinely very popular support. That's where it all comes from. Right there. And so it's not a surprise that this is where most of the pushback or most of the energy is going to be in terms of their political
Because this is really the last group they've got a strong grip on.
100%.
So they gotta hold on tight. And it just so happens that they're a really important group. They're President Trump's most rock-solid constituency in terms of his support. So they're a very important group. And they want to make sure that they don't start to drift away the way that most of the rest of the population has.
Same with the congressman. I mean, this is why it matters for Gaetz and all these other people to speak out, because those people, I mean, think about it. If you're a congressman, You have to go to the groups, or just to go speak in general at different places. Who are you most likely going to speak to? Retirement homes, churches, or religiously inspired nonprofits, whatever. Well, these are exactly the type of folks who would be involved in that. And so at a demographic level, that's where they feel so much pressure, often from the people who visit their office, the pastors and others who are prominent. They have a flock. Isn't that what they call it, a flock or something? When you have a large group of people that are like, oh, well, my flock is very supportive of Israel, right? So you could just see how this whole pressure campaign on them, which is so organized and ingrained in Republican politics, becomes so influential. And it's noteworthy that Gaetz can only say any of this whenever he's out of office.
Yeah,
that's the most important part.
I was thinking about that.
Yeah.
I was like, I wonder what you were saying at the time to get your little code scanned at the moment.
He was usually anti-neocon. I covered him since 2015. I can't recall an instance where he was overtly pro-war with Iran or
but if he was in that room at the AIPAC fundraiser,
So,
getting his code scanned, he was saying some things.
Yeah, it's like, there's got to be something that is going on. But look, nonetheless, we appreciate it.
I appreciate the disclosure now, yes,
Thank
for
you.
sure.
As well as, remember his previous story about how he was in Israel, or he was on a trip, I think, right? And somebody, he found someone in his hotel room. Oof, creepy. All right. Okay, guys, thank you so much for watching. Great Friday show for everybody tomorrow. We'll see you later. Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.